Okay, today we're going to talk about adding capacitors. This is a very simple process. I'm going to show you how to do this, and hopefully you don't forget. We have single capacitors and we have dual capacitors. I want to show you how to take a dual capacitor and make a larger single capacitor out of it. I want to show you how to take a dual capacitor and a single capacitor and still add more microfarads to that. I'm going to show you how to take two single capacitors and get a dual capacitor out of that, where they're sharing a common, and how to add as many as you possibly can to get the amount of microfarads, and how to test that on your meter, testing microfarads so you know that your math is right. That's the ultimate part of it, is to make sure that it does math. So first we're going to talk about the theory of capacitors. They store energy, and when we look at the board that I have up here, as you can see, I've got 8 dual capacitors and 1 single capacitor, and all those capacitors, if I were to add them up together, would we get up to 325? So I'm gonna demonstrate that on the smart board and show you that, and then we're going to show you how to do that with real capacitors. Stay tuned. All right, so we're up here at the smart board, and I've got 8 dual capacitors and 1 single capacitor up here. And it doesn't matter what size these are. It's kind of blurred out, you can't really see, and that's fine. Let's just say that every one of these dual capacitors, let me find a good color here, let's use purple. Let's say that every one of these capacitors were 35 on the higher end, and on the low end part we would normally wire the fan motor to was 5. And we say this was 35 plus 5, and we're just going to continue that all the way on. 35 plus 5, 35 plus 5, 35 plus 5, 35, 35 plus 5. This last capacitor, we're just going to say that that's just 5. So it's 35 plus 5. There's 8 of those, so we're seeing 35 plus 5 times 8 plus 5. What I meant by that, there's a common terminal on every one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and say C, H, and F. As you know, that's common, Herm, and fan. Herm is the higher microfarad reading, so between common and Herm. We'll show you how to test these out, but between common and Herm I would have 35, and between common and fan I would have 5. And if every one of these were the same, then I'm just going to sit here and just label every single one of these . Fan, common, Herm, fan, common, Herm. Here we'll just say common and F for fan, since it's 5 microfarads. So if we were to add all those up, how do we get to 325 microfarads? So we're going to go ahead and say that I'm going to jump Herm and fan out. I'm going to put a jumper between here and here, okay? And with that jumper, I'm not jumping out common. Common needs to be left alone. But I would come over here and I would jump common to common. Okay? And then I would take this jumper and I would come back to fan, or sorry, Herm, jump it back to fan, come back over, and all it is a gigantic series. Now I have to keep jumping my commons. And so if I jump Herm to fan, there's 35 plus 5, I now get 40. So at this point, I'm 40 plus 40 plus 40 plus 40. If I were to unhook common or anything here, I will lose that microfarads, and I'm going to show you that. But I need to add this next row. And so what we're going to do is, I'm just going to come off this side since it'll be a little easier. I'm going to come down on my Herm side, and I'm just going to continue to jump out. I'm going to go ahead and write the value, 40, Herm, fan, 40, Herm, fan, 40, Herm, plus fan equals 40. And now I have to come down here and jump out all my commons. Now last but least, I need to go ahead and take my fan side, add that to this fan side, take my common, add that to this common, and if I were to read my microfarads on this last capacitor, we would add up 40 times 8, which gives us 320. That last one is adding 5 to it. It gives us 325. So it's 35 plus 5, which equals 40, times 8 plus 5. And that's how we get to 325 microfarads. It's not practical, but it's good to experiment. If you have a bunch of capacitors to start learning how to add these and take them away. Like I said, I can take any one value away or change this and even get a series of dual capacitors here too. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this, and we're going to try a couple more scenarios. I'm just going to erase all these values here. All right, so let's go ahead and delete a couple of these out of the way. And let's go ahead and simplify learning now. I have two capacitors here. I have one dual capacitor and one single capacitor. Now these capacitors both need a common terminal, right? So the common terminal, we're going to say is here, and we can say here. Well, that leaves the other terminal as an output. So when I say this is common, what we're saying is one leg of power, doesn't matter if it's L1 or L2, will supply voltage here. We're going to store energy, and when we're ready to release that, we have two different outputs. So one of these outputs, we can change the microfarads up. We can say that this dual capacitor, we'll call it a dual cap. We'll say this dual cap is a 30 plus 7.5. All right, and so if I said that this is my hermetic side and this is my fan side, then the fan side would have the 7.5 and the hermetic would have the 30. But those are outputs. So one would be an output to my start winding on my compressor. The other one would be an output to my start winding on my fan motor. Same thing over here. I can say that this is a single capacitor. And I can say this is, we'll just say this is 10. Right? So if this is 10 microfarads, then the other side, this would be an input from L1, right? This will be an output to my start winding. All right, so when we look at this, if we had to add things together, if I wanted to make a 37.5, I would literally just go ahead and disconnect our high voltage. right? You never want to do this with there being power present on it. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of these outputs and these inputs for a second. Okay. I would say I would add this side here, okay, to this side here, and that's adding these two together, making this dual capacitor now a single 37.5 capacitor. And so we would have L1 as an input, and then we would have an output. Doesn't matter if I took my output out of the Herm side or the fan side. It's because it's jumped here, it is now a single capacitor. That is how we took a dual and made it single. If I needed to add more to it, very simply, just go ahead and remove power off of it. And go ahead and just do this a different way too. We can sit here and say that we want to add 10 to one side, so I want to add 40 plus 7.5. So I have a 30 and a 7.5 dual, and I have a 10, but I need a 40 plus 7.5. Then I can simply say, I'm going to take my hermetic side of here, which I know is 30, and I'm going to add it to the 10. So I'm going to come over here. And now what I've just done is I now have shorted out between the fan and the hermetic side of this one, making this 40, right? And as long as these commons are tied together and my input is here, then I will have 40 microfarads. And if I said that this is also an output, all right, this would be my second output. I can put it on this side or I can put it on this side. It doesn't matter which one. Here I would have 40. Over here I would have 7.5. So 40 plus 7.5. That's how that works. We'll try it a couple other ways. Say all I had was a couple of these single capacitors, and what I needed was, say I needed 15 microfarads, right? And all I had on my truck was, say all I had was a 5 microfarad, a 5 microfarad, and a 5 microfarad. But what we need is 15 microfarads. Well, we're going to add these together to get this. And how we would do that is we would just simply daisy chain. Okay, I'm going to jump. Let me make that a little bit easier for you. It doesn't matter which way I did this, but make it a little bit easier for you. Since I'm on this side, I'm going to come over to this side. And then I'm going to come over again to this side. And then this would be my output, which is where I will receive 15 microfarads. But I have to put the commons in series. So I'm going to use a different color and say that this is my common going in. I now have to run these commons in series as well. And so as long as everything's in series, then at the very end of this, if I put my meter down here and read microfarads between these two posts, I will have 15 microfarads, and I'll have 15 microfarads as my output too. So if I needed to run more microfarads, let's just say that I had a 25, say I had a 25 plus 5. And my goal was to get 35 plus 5 dual. Say I needed a 35 plus 5 dual capacitor. So let's go ahead and erase all this over here. and say our objective is to get say we were trying to get 35 plus 5 microfarads, and you just didn't have it. So how would I tie in 3 5s and my only dual capacitor, which is a 25 plus 5? All right, so very simply, we'll say, okay, well, we have a common, a Herm, and we have a fan. So we know our Herm is our highest microfarad. So we're getting 25 here. We're getting 5 here. And so I would say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and take, I could take the first capacitor and keep it a dual and just add all these. There's 2 ways to do it. Or I can make this a single and make my last capacitor the dual. So I'm going to do it both ways. First, I'm going to tie hermetic and fan together. That right there gives me 30. Okay? The moment I do this, all right, I come over here, I jump the next one, all right, and I take common and I jump it. The moment I do this, I now have 35. Okay? Now I have 2 more 5s that really aren't necessary. I only need 1 of them, right? So it doesn't matter which one. I'm going to go ahead and take and add common, okay? And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add here. If I did that, that will make this 40, right? Which we're not trying to achieve that. Let me go ahead and back a couple spaces up. I'm getting ahead of myself here. If I left it at this right here, okay, then I have this as an output, which would be 5 all by itself. We don't need this one in this application, and this would give me 35 plus 5. Another way of doing that, simply we can take, with these same capacitors, we can say common, fan, Herm. We'll just say common and fan, right? And we could say, I want to make these 2 commons tie together. And I want to go ahead and tie this hermetic over to this side over here. This 25 plus this 5 will give me 30. I'm going to go ahead and tie in common again over to here. I'm going to tie this fan side over to here. This gives me another 5. So total over here is 35. The 5 microfarads will just come out of here. I'm just going to write 5 UF, 35 UF, and now I have 35 UF. If I wanted to add them all together, let's go ahead and see what that would give us. If they were all 5s, like I have displayed up here. Rewind this if you need to. I'm going fast, I know that. If I said I wanted to have a dual capacitor that is 30, 35, 40. Say I wanted to get 40 plus 5. Say that was my goal. Then what I would do is I can do it 2 ways. I can simply take all my commons. Notice how I'm labeling this to make it easy. I would simply take fan and Herm, tie those together. That immediately gives me 30 on this one. That's treating this as a single capacitor, right? Then I would come over and I would tie fan. Now I'm at plus 5. I would come over and tie fan again. That's another plus 5. So now I'm at 40, okay, I would take my commons and jump them out, okay, L1 coming in. And with this, I have just 5 over here all by itself. And so 30 plus 5 equals 40 microfarads plus 5. So that makes it a dual capacitor because this series of capacitors is giving me 40, and this one all by itself, see, 25 plus 5 is 30. That's 40 plus 5. The other way of doing it would be, let me go ahead and erase this and take my first capacitor, and I'm going to keep that a dual capacitor, which means it's still a 25 plus 5. All right, so I would say this is fan, common, Herm, and what we would do is we would add here to here, call that fan, here to here, call that fan, here to here, call that fan. The rest of these are commons. And we will leave this one fan all by itself. And then so now we've taken 25 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 25 plus 5 plus 5, 40 UF. As long as all my commons are tied together. All right. And so as long as everything's in series, okay, then this one terminal over here that I connected to nothing would represent 5 all by itself. Notice I'm putting the UF, the microfarad sign, after the number. I didn't put it here, 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 or here. I put it after my total. So I know taking the 25 here, right, adding 5 to it gives me 30. Adding 5 to it gives me 35. Adding 5 to it now gives me 40 microfarads. One side is 40. The other side is 5. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple of single capacitors that we want to try to create a dual capacitor out of. So say we want to go ahead and just say we're not going to use that. I'm going to add more of these. And a lot of y'all have been in this situation before. And it looks crazy how you have to duct tape all this together, try to fit it into a control panel. So, I mean, you got to be careful not to short out the side of your contactors and all that. These control panels do not give us a whole lot of room here. Let's say that this was 10 microfarads by itself. This was 5 microfarads by itself. This was 7.5 microfarads by itself. This was 3 microfarads by itself. And say this is 12.5 by itself. All right, if we added all those up, we have 15 plus 7.5 plus 5. I'm sorry, let me go ahead and minus 2 because that was a 3 plus 12.5. That would be 38 microfarads. If we added all this up, we can get up to 38 microfarads. Now, there's nothing that you can run for 38 microfarads. So we're going to go ahead and not use the 3, and we're just going to say we need a 35 plus 3. So say our goal was to achieve 35 UF plus 3 UF, and then we wanted to have a dual capacitor. All right, 35 plus 3. Then what we would do, let me go ahead and move this one out of the way, is we would say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and jump out. Let's go ahead and label these first. Common, fan, common, fan. I'm saying fan not because it's being wired for fan, just because we know it's a very low microfarad, so I don't want to call it a Herm. But maybe our goal is to have 35 microfarads for the Herm and 3 microfarads for that ream condenser fan motor. Say this was a ream system or something like that. They love their 3 microfarads. So we'll say common, fan, common, fan, common, and fan. Well, we would have to say that the 3 is going to be all by itself, but we need to go ahead and add in the 12.5, the 5, the 10, and the 7.5 to get 35. So we're going to take the commons, and we're going to jump all the commons out. All the commons need to be jumped out. All right. Remember, it's a dual capacitor. So you're going to tie all your commons together. And we'll say that this is L1 over here. All right. And now we have to tie in this fan motor here. I'm sorry, this side of the capacitor over here to this side. This side over here. There we go. All right, so we have 10 plus 5 plus 12.5. Now we have to add this 7.5 over here. So we're just going to jump out this side of the capacitor to this side of the capacitor. Then we're going to give it an output, and this will be out. Obviously, this is in. So input, charging all the capacitors. All the outputs are in series with each other. The final output would be 35 microfarads. And this one here, it's all by itself. It's not tied to anything. I'm going to go ahead and use black just so I can come over here and not make it look like it's all together. And we would say this is 5 micro, I'm sorry, that's 3. 3 microfarads all by itself. So we have a 35 plus 3 microfarad. Because all the commons are tied together, it made it a dual. It made it a dual. Now, if I didn't want it to be a dual, then all I would simply do is I would come over here and I'm going to take out this one jumper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out this common here to this common here. Okay? And now I'm going to have to take L1 and I'm going to have to come up and feed it an input. So now I have one capacitor that has L1 all by itself, so it's a 3, and I have the rest of them that are all tied together, which is a 35. So this is not a dual capacitor. The only way to make this a dual capacitor would be to take this input from L1 and tie all my commons together. So we would be here, common, and here. So because all these L1s are in series with each other, I'm making this dual. And I have 2 different outputs because not all my outputs are in series. Only 4 out of the 5 are in series with each other. So all my inputs are in series, but only 4 out of my 5 are in series with each other. So the one that's not in series is all by itself. So that would be the 3 side. The other 4 that are in series with each other on the outputs would be my 35 microfarad side. But because my commons are all in series, it is one capacitor. It is one dual capacitor. Yes, it's a mess. It's a bunch. So we're going to go ahead and take this over to the board where I have a lot of capacitors. I'm going to take them all out of the box, and I'm going to show you what their actual values are. We're going to test them all individually, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add in dual capacitors and add single capacitors, and then we're just going to make sure that we have a different perspective on it past the smart board. So stay tuned. All right, so we have a bunch of capacitors here. We're going to go over these capacitors. I have a 55 plus 5 capacitor dual, a 70 plus 7.5 capacitor dual, 80 plus 10 dual capacitor. I have a 45 plus 5 dual capacitor. I have a 10 microfarad capacitor. I have a 7.5 microfarad capacitor. I have a 5 microfarad single capacitor, and I have a 3 microfarad capacitor. So we're going to go ahead and take all these out of the box, and the first thing you should always do is make sure your capacitors are reading the proper microfarads prior to selling the capacitor, installing the capacitor, You just want to make sure that you're getting what you need. And the purpose of this video is to know how to test these capacitors and also how to add these capacitors to get more microfarads in the event that you need to have a larger single capacitor or create a larger dual capacitor or create a dual capacitor. We're going to go ahead and take first, and we're going to just check these capacitors. All right, I have a 5, a 3, a 7.5, and a 10. So we're going to take our meter, okay? We're going to go ahead and come over here to microfarads, MFD. We're going to take our test leads, and what we want to do, make sure this can be seen there. We want to first come to each end. As you can see, I have no voltage here. And we want to just hold the leads there. And I'm reading 10. I'm reading 5. I'm reading 2.9. And I'm reading 7.4 for my 7.5. And if I wanted to add these capacitors together, then if we math that out, we would say 7.5 plus 10 plus 3 plus 5. 7.5 plus 3 plus 10 plus 5. That's 25.5. And so if I wanted to add all these together, then we would have to daisy chain every single one of these. And I'm going to go ahead and daisy chain, trying to use the same colors. You notice the first post only had one wire on it. So we'll say that's the input from L1. And then the common leg will just be continuously jumped in series to all the other capacitors. And one side of my capacitor is now in series, but all I've got here is a bunch of single capacitors here. I don't have anything added together until I take the other side and I start putting them in series. And I color coded this to make this a little bit easier to follow. Hopefully you can see that okay. All right, so white is one side of the capacitor, yellow is the other side of the capacitor. Both colors are in series. And all I have to do is take this very first capacitor here that only has one wire on each side, and I can just test the microfarads, and I should have 25 plus 5. So we're going to go ahead and take our leads. And we come up to 25.64. All right, so that's how we know that we have successfully added these capacitors. Let's just say we needed to get a dual capacitor. If I wanted to do a dual capacitor out of these series, say I wanted to take my 3 microfarad capacitor, let me find it here, and I wanted to run my 3 microfarad capacitor as my low side of my dual. I'm just going to take all these off real quick. I would add these 3 together, and then I would say plus 3. So I'm going to first do my common, even though these aren't labeled common and fan, on a single capacitor, either side is going to be common. Just pick one and follow with it. So we're going to go ahead and just see how I didn't jump on my first one. I took my second capacitor and I'm starting to jump it out. I'm starting to put the next capacitor in series. All right, and I'm going to come over here, and then my last capacitor in series, will look just like my first capacitor. Okay, make sure that it's a good connection. There we go. All right, so my commons are all done. They're all tied together. Okay, now I'm going to have to add in these three, not the first capacitor, but these three have to be added together because we want these three to be one sum and this one to be all by itself. So we're going to go ahead and add in the output side. Okay, and I'm just going to come back and jump to this middle one here. And now all of those are tied together with the exception of this one. This post is all by itself because I only want three. So if I wanted to come over here, I can put one lead on this one capacitor. Touch this side, I should have 3 microfarads. I'm going to leave my lead here. And I'm going to come over here to the other side over here. And I'll have the sum of these three, which is 22.6. And so I'm adding the 7.5, the 10, and I believe the other one was a 5. So 22.6. So I can also come down here and I'll just read 22.65, which is basically 22 and a half microfarads. Or I can leave my lead over here and come back over here, and I'm going to read 3. Now here's what happens. This is what makes it a dual. If I disconnect this one wire from this one capacitor, I'm going to read absolutely nothing. So the moment I put my common in series with it, I now will read 3 microfarads. And if I come over here to common on this side and put it over here, because all my commons are in series, I can now read my 22 on the other side. That's what makes it a dual capacitor. So we showed you how to make 25.5 microfarads single, and how to take these 4 and make 22.5 plus 3 dual. We're going to go ahead and mess around with these larger capacitors here. We're going to go ahead and take these small single capacitors out of here. We're going to put a couple of dual capacitors together. How do we add dual capacitors? Well, we're going to show you on the smart board. Rewind that a bunch of times because we're just drawing a bunch of lines between these things. Here I have a capacitor that is 80 plus 10 microfarads. So if I wanted to add that, and say I needed to get to 150 microfarads, right? Well, 80 plus 70, that'll get me to 150 microfarads, right? And say I don't want to use the fan side. I just want to use the Herm terminals. Then very simply, I would come over here and I would tie my commons together. Okay? I would tie my Herms together. And I can take my 2 leads and I can go on any capacitor between common and Herm, and I will add up the total value. I have 149.8. So that's 150 microfarads. Okay? Now this is a dual capacitor because between here and here I have 10 microfarads. Leaving my lead here because it's in series with this one, I come over here and I read 7.5 microfarads, right? Over here, I'm reading the sum of both capacitors, which will give me 150. Break one wire off of there, and now I lose that 150. See, I'm reading 80 microfarads now, that's 79. And so you have to connect your commons in series. And I think what a lot of people do in the field is they forget that both sides have to be in series. Both of them have to be in series. So both Herms have to be in series, both commons have to be in series to make this one capacitor. And in this case, because I have an additional terminal, the fan side open, I have one dual capacitor with 2 additional single capacitors. If I wanted to add those two singles together, all I would do, I'm going to use a different color. Not that it matters, but just to save you some confusion. And I'm going to take this fan terminal here and this fan terminal here. And what I've done is I've just created a gigantic dual capacitor. So I'm going to come over here between common and Herm. We'll read 150. And I'm going to leave on common and come over here to fan. And you'll now see that I'm reading 17 microfarads because I'm adding this side to it. Okay. And that's how I would make a gigantic dual capacitor. And it's the same thing. I can just continue to add these. If I wanted to add 45 plus 5, and say I wanted to make this 45 plus 5 a 50, well, then I would come over here with Herm, connect it to fan, okay? And now I'm going to slide these out of the way here, okay? I'm going to come over here between Herm and common, and now I would read 50 microfarads. If I remove that, I'm back to a dual capacitor, and I'm going to read 45 microfarads, and over here I'm going to read 5 microfarads. But if I wanted to have a single capacitor that's 50 microfarads, I can take that 45 plus 5 off my truck, jump these two out, and you can see here I'm now reading 50 microfarads. Now if I wanted to add this in conjunction to my first capacitor that we built, all I have to do is just add this Herm in series with this Herm. Make sure I'm in view. And now I just tied everything together with the exception of my commons. Now I got to tie my commons together. So I'm going to come over here and tie common, over here to common. And now I should have roughly around 200 microfarads. So we'll come over here to our last capacitor where we just read 50. And we'll come over here to the 5 microfarad side and common, and we should read 200. 200 microfarads. That was 5, now it's saying 200. Imagine that. And so now we just made a 200 microfarad capacitor that's still dual, because the other side, the red side, if I left on common, remember it's 17. So I have a 200 plus 17 and a half microfarad dual capacitor, okay? And that's just how this works. So rewind this video. I hope it helps you out. We're gonna get into more videos where we talk about start capacitors and you know, how those start capacitors work with potential relays, hard starts, soft starts, the difference between the two, how it helps aid starting torque and lowering your electric bills. And you know, capacitors and adding them is a real thing in the field. Make sure that you share this video, like, subscribe to our channel for more content that's coming out as we move into other subjects. Thank you for your support. We appreciate y'all.